Hello and welcome for another webinar. Today we're going to talk about some really important topics regarding cyber security, and we hope that you'll find it to be very interesting. I'm joined by two of our wealth advisors, Harmony Wagner, who's a certified financial planner, and also Samantha Masey, who is studying to be a certified financial planner. And I think you're going to find the information that they've put together will be really helpful, not only to yourself, but also maybe your parents, grandparents, children. Share this information because I think what you're going to get out of today's presentation will be valuable in many ways. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Harmony Wagner to take over and kick off the meeting.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're very excited to present our first annual Cybersecurity Prevention and Awareness Month this September. You've been receiving a lot of resources from us through emails, things on our website, things on our social media pages, if you're following along there. So we're really focusing this month. This topic is so important that it's worth dedicating a whole month to, and just to address it and provide some relevant resources to our clients. As a firm, this is something that we talk about much more often than just 1 month out of the year. And a little bit later in the presentation, we'll kind of share a little bit more about our firm culture, specifically on the topic of cybersecurity. But we really wanted to take some time out of the year to focus on this in a way that we can present information to our clients. And as Steve shared, it may help you, and I think it will, but it may also help other people in your family or in your network that need to know this. It can really prevent a lot of headaches and a lot of trouble by taking a few steps to prevent cybercrime in your own personal life. Technology is here to stay, and it seems like it only increases as part of our everyday life for most of us. And by the same token, cybercrime is here to stay as well. It seems like the sophistication and frequency of cyber attacks is increasing as quickly as technology advances. No sooner does a new type of technology come out or a way to use it come out than there's a threat of being potentially taken advantage of through that new technology. So it's really important to stay up to speed on kind of what's going on in the world and how you can protect yourself. There's a few interesting statistics that I wanted to share to kick off our topic today. And the first one is a little bit surprising, although I think you can look at it in a positive way if you choose to. And that's that 95% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by human error. So whether that be clicking on a malicious link, giving away personal information to a scammer, using poor password protocols, or something else. But oftentimes, the wide majority of the time, these breaches happen because of a mistake that was made. So the bad news is that cyber criminals are obviously very skilled at what they do, and they're able to entice people to making these costly errors. But the good news is that because it is caused by human error a lot of the time, that means that it's preventable. And by taking a few steps to really protect yourself and to be more aware and vigilant when you're using technology, you can really prevent the wide majority of these attacks and really increase your level of protection against cybercrime. It's a very profitable industry, if you want to call it that, and it's actually expected to cost the world $10.5 trillion annually by 2025, which is just a few years away. It's crazy thinking about how much money is lost due to these schemes. And if it was measured as a country, it'd actually be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. So again, just another staggering statistic showing how broad this problem is. It's not a matter of if you may be targeted by a cyber attack, but more a matter of when. And fraudsters have really taken advantage of the pandemic in a major way as well. You see on this last bullet point that since the pandemic began, the FBI has reported a 300% increase in reported cybercrimes. And I would imagine that there are many that are never caught or reported as well. So that increase is probably even higher than the statistic shows. As people began to work from home, spend more time on social media or their devices, and do more and more daily tasks like banking, shopping over the web, that just increased the opportunity to be affected by cybercrime. So it's really, again, an opportune time to be thinking about this and making sure that in your life you have the appropriate standards and protocols in place to really protect yourself. Moving on to our next slide, I'll share just briefly about a few different types of scams. When we talk about this topic of cybersecurity, there's really three main kind of categories that a lot of these scams or attacks fall into. And the first is password attacks, which is when hackers get access to your passwords and or other personal information. For example, things that may be answers to common security questions like your mother's maiden name or what street you lived on in third grade, things like that. Having access to your passwords and that other kind of information allows them to access your accounts and actually impersonate and act as you. It doesn't take too much imagination to think about how much damage a hacker could do with, access to your bank account online or, any kind of financial account like that. So that's kind of a main category of cybercrime is attacking passwords and getting those and being able to, oftentimes use one password from one site and, apply it to many others and affect a large part of your electronic life, let's say. The second main type is malware, which is when a malicious program or virus is installed on a device that allows hackers to access your information or otherwise manipulate you, perhaps using ransomware, which is when they would lock up either your device or certain files and refuse to release those until you paid a certain ransom. Malware can be installed by clicking on unsafe links in emails, visiting compromised websites, to name just a few. And finally, we have phishing with a PH. And this typically applies to emails, although I think we've all received suspicious phone calls and texts as well. A phishing email or other communication is when a fraudster attempts to send an email or text or make a phone call that seems legitimate, seems like it be coming from a source that you might trust or a person that you might know. And using different social engineering tactics, they try to pressure you or trick you into giving them information or allowing them to access your device by clicking on a link or something like that. There are almost 3.5 billion phishing emails sent worldwide every day, which is crazy to think about. So I'm sure that everyone watching this presentation today has probably received at least one phishing email. And I know I have, and they do seem to be getting more and more sophisticated and more able to trick you. They look legitimate, but really, if you don't know the source, then there's a good chance that it could be from a malicious location. So those are kind of the three main ways that cybercrime can occur, and especially the ones that are most common to affect each and every one of us in our everyday life as we're using technology. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my fellow presenter, Samantha, to start sharing some tips on how you can protect yourself and your family members from being victimized by cybercrime.
Thanks, Harmony. And thank you for sharing that impactful information. I know I take that information into account with my cyber awareness. And for this next section, we're actually going to present some tips that we hope will help you protect your wealth and information moving forward. So for tip number one, we'll just jump in. Tip number one is use strong passwords. Now, this might seem very simple to some of you, but it really is so important. And if you take one thing away from this webinar, I want to say, take away this tip right here. So let's walk through some ways that you can do this in your own life. So the first one that we're going to talk about is two-factor authentication. Now, what this is an extra layer of protection used to ensure the security of online accounts beyond just your username and password. So essentially, it's a unique second password when you log in. So let's look at this graphic that I have pulled up here. So for this first part over here on the left, we have someone entering in their username and then their password, like you normally would with your account. And then using an app, they generate a unique code that acts as the second password to their phone. And they take that code and they enter it into the account as well. And then they would log in. Now there's a number of apps that you can do or that you can use that we would recommend. And if you want help with this, please reach out after this webinar. We would be happy to help you set that up. Another important point to point out is use different passwords for every platform that you are logging into. You don't want to have just one that you use across the board, because if one gets hacked, the rest of them could get hacked. So please protect your information by differentiating per platform. You also want to create complicated passwords. So let's take a look at how you can do this. want to draw your attention over to this left column here, this weak passwords column. Now, what you're looking at is just a normal password or passphrase. And one important point I want to bring up is when you're coming up with your password, try to use something that's completely out of the box that no one would be able to guess about you. So avoid using passwords related to your hometown or your pet's name or your favorite color. Just something just completely unrelated. And what you want to do after you've chosen your password or your passphrase is you want to strengthen it. So you can do this by adding capital letters and numbers as well as your lowercase letters. And then to make it a really strong password, you want to look at this third column where they've added in symbols as well. Now, if creating a strong password is something that you think that you would struggle coming up with, or it's just difficult, the whole concept is difficult overall, there are some ways that you can get a strong password by using a password generator. So what you would do is go to one of these password generators and they would basically spit out a code that you would copy, and you could use that as a secure password for your accounts. A very important point that I also want to bring up is never use your social security number in any part of your login activity. This is very risky and you don't want the wrong person getting a hold of that number. And lastly, avoid storing passwords in email folders and really anywhere on your desktop. If you get hacked, someone can have access to all of your accounts. So please just try to avoid doing that. So tip number 2, keep your technology up to date. This is a really simple but effective way you can protect your information. And I'm talking about technology such as your phone, your tablet, your computer, any technology that you're using. And the way that you do this is you go into your general settings, then go to software update and make sure that your automatic updates are set to on. And what this basically does is eliminate software flaws that allow hackers to view your activity and steal your information. Our next tip, Harmony kind of hit on earlier, but it's so important that we're going to kind of dig down into what it actually means. So be suspicious of unsolicited emails, phone calls, and texts. We've all received that phone call that is asking us to extend our car warranty, or that text with a random link they want you to click on, or the phishing email. I want to draw your attention to this statistic that I have down here. 91% of cyber attacks begin with a phishing email. That is a staggering number, and there are ways that we can combat that. So I want to point out these 2 tips that I have listed here. Do not provide personal identifiable information unless you trust the source. That is so important. If there's anything fishy about it at all, do not provide any information. And the second one is do not click on any unknown links. What you really want to do is go directly to the source if you get an unknown link. Make sure that you are clicking on something that is verified. I have this example email down here where basically a scammer is creating a situation that puts pressure on you. And that's what scammers do. They create a situation that makes you feel like you need to take immediate action. And they want you to quickly skim and then click on whatever they're asking you to click on. So my recommendation is slow down, be cautious, read through your emails completely, make sure you know what the source is asking you to do, that you recognize the source, and that there's not some risky link or download attached to it. And again, go directly to the source instead of clicking on a link provided by one of these emails. Tip number 4, regularly check account balances and credit reports. This is a really great way to head off fraudulent activity on your bank accounts, on your credit cards. And so what I'm asking you to do is make sure that you're checking your monthly bank statements, whether you're paperless or you receive them in the mail. Look for irregular activity. Look for purchases from places you don't normally go to, or people purchasing from locations that you haven't been to, and just stay on top of that. Another way that you can do this is set up alerts with your bank or your credit card company, and that way they can reach out to you if they detect any irregular activity. And let's be honest, most of the time they probably track it down before we do. So it's a great system to be a part of where they'll reach out to you, say, was this actually you? And if not, let's freeze this account until we figure it out. Another thing that we recommend doing is requesting your free annual credit report. And we recommend going to annualcreditreport.com And currently, because of the pandemic and the spike in cybercrimes that we've seen, they're offering free weekly online reports to protect you and your information, and they're doing their part. So I highly recommend you take advantage of this. It is a great resource. For our next tip, we have do not share personal identifiable information on social media. And as someone with a background in marketing, I can really vouch for the validity of this statement. You really need to protect yourself because there have been cases of people getting their accounts hacked and people using that information to guess passwords or steal identities. So below I have a couple ways to really protect yourself on your social media accounts. So for the first one, I have set your account to private. Now this is the default on social media accounts, but maybe at some point you set yours to public. So I just recommend going in, checking, making sure it actually is set to private. You want people to only really see your profile name, your profile picture, maybe a little bit of information about you. You also want to avoid listing personal details like birth date, hometown, and phone numbers. These details are sensitive information about you that when you think about it, are used to open accounts, to create passwords. Even though I recommend you don't use that to create passwords, some people do. And so to protect that information, don't include it on your social media. I also recommend you avoid what we call overfriending. And what this basically means is that you're only friends with people that you actually know, that are in your life, your network. And when you do this, you know that when you're posting content, it's going out to a safe network of people. And lastly, be careful about what you're posting. We live in a culture of oversharing, and it can be great, but it also can, be a negative thing. We really need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves with the information that we're putting out there. I have an example here of people posting pictures with their vaccine card, and they're just so excited they wanted to share that I got my vaccination. But on this card, there was sensitive information such as people's birth dates and so on. And so people were taking advantage of this. So I just recommend be aware of what you're putting out there and protect yourself by doing these things that I mentioned. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Harmony to talk about these next couple tips.
Next, we're going to talk about ways to use the internet safely. And like Sam shared, keeping updates on your browser and any plugins that you might have, keeping those updates constantly run so that everything's up to date is going to help, as oftentimes those new releases and software updates are covering weak points that were discovered in the previous version. So keeping those browsers up to date, any plugins that you use is going to help protect any vulnerabilities that you might have while using the web. Secondly, using a pop-up blocker, that will help ensure that no separate windows are able to open up, whether it's just a pesky ad or maybe something that could be more malicious, a virus that's trying to install itself on your computer, making sure that those types of pop-ups are not able to open without your knowledge and really your express consent in that moment that you're really trying to view that pop-up. So using a blocker will help prevent that and just keep your overall internet experience a little bit cleaner overall. Finally, and this is probably one of the most important ones on surfing the internet safely, is to be cautious when you're connecting to public networks, whether it's a hotel, a cafe, public transit, a mall, really anywhere. I feel like I notice sometimes when I'm walking around that a little notification will pop up on my phone that there's a free Wi-Fi network available nearby and asking if I want to connect to it. These free networks, although they may be legitimate, they often lack virus protections, making them highly susceptible to attacks. And although I would recommend against using them at all, to be quite honest with you, they should absolutely not be used to access any confidential personal information. So if you can avoid connecting to these free public networks, I would do so. But if you do need to log in, for looking something up or whatever it might be, please do not use them for any sensitive transactions. Don't be logging onto your bank account using one of these networks or going into your password manager or really anything that you wouldn't want someone seeing. If you're connected to a public network, I would, for caution's sake, assume that someone else is looking over your shoulder and that they may be able to access whatever it is that you're accessing on your phone. So being really cautious with these public networks is one way to protect yourself, a major way. when you're surfing the internet safely. It really doesn't take long. It can only be a few minutes, and your device and or information can be compromised with these unprotected networks. The final tip we're going to talk about today, and this is one that's closest to my heart, is asking your advisor and any other partners that you work with in your life, professional partners who have access to your information, how that information is protected. Asking us how your wealth is protected. Your information is only as secure as the people that you trust it to. And as your advisor, we are always ready to answer the question, how does Bouchey Financial Group protect my wealth and personal data? And there's three main ways that I'd like to share with you today about what we're doing to protect our clients. The first is continuous employee training. So we have ongoing trainings through a very vast library of resources specifically on the cybersecurity topic. There are certain trainings that each one of us in the firm complete on a regular basis. And there's also a lot of other information that we have access to. So it's quite common for myself and my colleagues, when we have 5-10 minutes of downtime in the day, to log on to that information resource and just go through it and familiarize ourselves with cybersecurity trends, what's going on, what are the common scams that are coming out that we need to be aware of for ourselves and for our clients. So we have continuous training specifically in this area. And we also talk about this on a weekly basis. We have staff meetings, multiple times a week. And this is quite often a topic of discussion. If anyone receives a suspicious email, we're sharing that information with the group and how we caught it and what we did to shut that down. So it's just a way that we keep our company culture always vigilant, always looking, always suspicious of any emails that come in that we did not expect, even if it might seem like it's from a trusted person. If we weren't expecting it, we're going to be questioning that and picking up the phone to give them a call. So that's how we kind of have built our company culture as a very aware team of the cybersecurity risk and being especially cautious. The second is stringent processes that verify client information. So we have a strict set of procedures that we have developed with our compliance partner to ensure that we are truly speaking with a client before providing any information or fulfilling a client request. And each one of our team members is very educated on what those procedures are and exactly what needs to be done at each time, to make sure that every request that we act on is legitimate and that we're confirming that. So we follow those procedures to a T and really observe them very strictly. And the third is, vetting our partners. So whether it's Charles Schwab or our client portal provider or anyone else that we work with, we are always making sure that they follow the same cybersecurity standards that we do and that they are fully compliant in every manner, so that any even an ounce of client information that they may be privy to is protected just as much as we would protect that for our clients. So making sure that any partner that we have is really observing the same strict procedures that we do is something that's very important to us. If you're concerned that you've been a victim of a breach or that your personal information may have been compromised in some way, in any part of your life, please call us. We can help you add the appropriate layers of protection to your accounts. We'll help you notify the appropriate parties. And, oftentimes we may have expertise in certain areas where we can at least point you in the right direction and make sure you're taking the right steps, even if it's not always directly with our firm, but making sure that you're doing the right things to protect yourself, especially when there are schemes. I think of the unemployment fraud that seemed to have been really rampant in the last year or so. When we see that with a number of our clients, we become knowledgeable on it and are able to help. And if you've been affected, let you know what are those steps that you need to take in order to protect yourself. So if you feel that you've been a victim of any kind of cybercrime or breach, please give us a call and we'll help you and assist you through the process of making sure that no further damage is done and that your information is secure. Naturally, I won't share any specific stories, but I can say that in my 5 years here at Bouchey, I've seen multiple times where our strict protocols and just the awareness that we have to this issue has helped us to catch situations where a client may have been victimized by a fraud or a hack, whether it was through a suspicious email that came in that helped us recognize that this is not the person that that we think it's coming from, or activity that doesn't seem characteristic of our clients. Those kind of things we're actually have been able to help clients and notify them that they were affected by cybercrime, and able to put the appropriate protections in place so that they weren't affected any further, and to prevent any further damage. So because we're so carefully trained on what to look for, we observe our procedures to the T, we're able to go beyond just protecting our client data, but also helping them identify when they may have been affected elsewhere by some type of hack or cybercrime. As I shared, if you feel that you've been the victim of something, or even if you just have other questions about this topic, we've given you an overview today and a lot of good information, but there's a lot to think about and a lot to be aware of when you're thinking about protecting yourself this way. So if we can be a further help, even just having a more in-depth conversation with you, please feel welcome to contact us. You can call our office, you can send us an email, however you'd like to reach out, and we'll be happy to have a more in-depth conversation and answer any other questions that you may have on the topic of cybersecurity.
Harmony, Samantha, thank you very much. I think this information is so valuable, and hopefully everybody that's on the webinar and those that view the webinar will find it to be as well. Samantha pointed out about Social Security numbers and cards. There was a day when everybody carried their Social Security card in their wallet. I beg you, if you still do that, or if your parents or grandparents do that, please beg them to take that Social Security card out of their wallet. If they ever lose their wallet, and not only is the Social Security card there, but a driver's license, somebody has all the information that they need to steal your identity. And going back to checking your credit score at least once a year through the annualcreditreport.com, it's free. It's really good. I personally have done it. I continue to do it. And recently I added on the monitoring. I think it cost me $29.99 a month, but it's well worth it, so that if somebody steals my identity, I'm going to be notified if somebody tries to borrow money or open up a credit card account. This week alone, we had a client who actually lost his wallet, called us and said, "Hey, I lost my wallet. Is there anything that we need to be careful about?" And as Harmony just pointed out, our office has been so diligent working with clients, helping them, because it's not if you'll be spammed, it's probably when. And the key is to know when to try not to answer any questions. We had another client out of the blue. One of the national companies, cable companies, called her, and it sounded legit, asked her all kinds of questions. She was a little, kind of taken back, answered the questions because she was worried. And as it turned out, it was really a malicious phone call. So we can't beg you enough. If it doesn't sound right, if you get an email that doesn't look right, do it the old-fashioned way. Pick up the phone and call the person and say, "Hey, did you just send me an email?" Or, take it a step further. Don't ever give your Social Security number out over the phone. Ask the person asking the question if you think it's legit. Tell me what the last 4 digits are and I'll confirm it or not. So these are just some tips. I think Samantha and Harmony did an amazing job pointing them out. I hope you enjoyed the webinar today. I can't thank you enough for taking time out. And as Harmony said, if you have any questions, reach out to our office. I'm going to hand it back to Harmony to close out the webinar, and I hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you again to all who listened today for your time and your attention to this important topic. We look forward to sharing a few more resources with you through the end of the month. And just to reiterate, we are always here for any questions. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.